Right, the Examiner has Sonia at 50 on their cover, Carl Denny, Michael Moynihan and Tommy Martin on the enduring appeal of Ireland's greatest female athlete. And then John Caulfield says investors actively looking at League of Ireland investment. So there is the talk yesterday in the paper that he might be part of the decision, he might be part of the consortium, and certainly the new manager for the consortium looking to take over. Cork City come back, and United Front, Emery claims he still has full backing of Arsenal. So either he's delusional or the board are still backing him and they're delusional too.
The Mirror this morning is love is not enough. Day on goal saves Klopp as Reds slip up. Did I love it? Frankly, no. Chelsea boss admits Blues got away with draw, and Kenny can make his own call over Keano. So this is Stephen Kenny not being forced to keep Robbie Keane on as part of his Republic of Ireland backroom staff. This was Noel Mooney, who was speaking yesterday. He obviously goes back to his UEFA gig now on Monday, or today, or tomorrow actually, I should say. So he's done, but one of the last things that came out was that Robbie Keane may not be kind of forced to stay around, or Stephen Kenny may not be forced to actually keep him on, depending what way you want to actually look at it. So Keith Andrews and Jim Crawford could link up with Stephen Kenny in the senior role. The
Telegraph this morning is Diane Lovren pointing the way, and then also the headline, City owners target global domination. They're looking to buy a club, an 8th club in Mumbai is going to be bought after their investment yesterday, £389 sterling, $500 million was the figure for that one.
The Herald this morning is down to the wire. Liverpool's Euro hopes hang on Salzburg clash, and injury blow for Young Ireland Ace. This is bad news for Josh Cullen, who suffered a serious ankle injury while in action for Charlton Athletic. He will be ruled out until after New Year, so ankle ligaments is what he's done in their championship draw with Cardiff City last Saturday. And the continuation of the 50 best dubs of the millennium.
Oh yeah, let's go, come on. We're getting to the good stuff now.
There is a controversial one in here. Number 20, Kevin McManaman. Number 19, Philly McMahon. Number 18, Mick Fitzsimons. Interesting that they've gone for Fitzsimons over Philly.
Yeah.
Number 17 is Rory O'Carroll.
Even though he stepped away.
And then we've got the person that we assume to be the highest up non-All-Ireland winner, which is Kieran Whelan at number 16. Johnny Cooper then at number 15. So you've got your dream full back line from the 21st century so far at 19, 18, 17, 15. So they've clearly got Cooper as their best defender, Rory O'Carroll as second, Fitzsimons third, and then Philly McMahon is their 4th best person in the full back line, it seems, unless somebody really unexpected makes it to the top 10. Conor O'Callaghan is at number 14. Michael Lara McCauley is at number 13. Paul Mannion is at 12. And then the controversial one, at number 11, this is the Herald, the Dublin newspaper, Diarmuid Connolly is at number 11.
Not even cracking the top 10?
Not even cracking the top 10. We speculated that he might be, you could make an argument for him to be number 1, certainly the top 3, but...
Don't think I'm having it.
You're not having number 11?
Don't think I'm having that.
I think he has to be top 10. Like, if you're putting Rory O'Carroll in there at number 17, he's obviously got there on the notion that you don't need a lot of time to prove that you are a top-class footballer. And Diarmuid Connolly, like, he's been around for a lot of the decade. Like, it's just the tail end of it that he hasn't been around for. This guy's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
It's not like a Conor O'Callaghan situation where he's just burst onto the scene, or a Rory O'Carroll situation where he removed himself for a long, long time and then kind of failed to make a comeback. Granted, I know Connolly probably be disappointed with the amount of minutes he got this season.
But the fact that they went to him.
That's true.
In crisis, they went straight to him. There was no fanning about. There was no, like, bringing him on to... It was like, yeah, come on, in you come.
That is the reason why they haven't put him into the top 10, was the sporadic absence. Should he not be higher? If genius were the main metric, he'd be near top spot itself. The unavoidable caveat is that for myriad reasons, Connolly has been a sporadic presence these past 3 seasons, and even then produced that game-altering cameo against Mayo in 2017.
But the previous 7, he was not sporadic. He was there most of the time, except for some occasional suspensions. And, like, that was the bit where they were asserting themselves as the big dogs. It's easier to come along and maintain. The ones that climb the mountain first are the ones who climb the mountain first. That's why we remember Roger Bannister and Neil Armstrong and all those firsts. Like, that Dublin team with Cluxton's free that you were talking about earlier, that was the hardest team to get on. And that was the hardest team to be a member of, because their achievement was the greatest in winning that one and breaking the famine.
And also the return from the disaster in 2014, again, which Connolly was obviously unbelievable, and it turned out. And I guess putting this run together, going from an All-Ireland winning team to the best team of all time, is not an easy step to make when you're extremely good, it's hard to make that step up, and that's exactly what Dublin did, thanks to the likes of Connolly, thanks to the likes of Cluxton, who we'll see in the top 10, and of course Bernard Brogan.
Who's left, right?
Cluxton, McCaffrey, Fenton, Brogan,
Brogans.
James McCarthy, Alan Brogan,
Paul Flynn.
There is also Kieran Kilkenny,
Dean Rock,
and one more that we haven't seen yet. Who are we missing? Brian Howard has been mentioned. Niall Scully has been mentioned.
Cian
O'Sullivan.
So that's the 10 tomorrow.
That's the 10 tomorrow. We expect.
Well, all of those have to be in it. if any of that 10 got left off, they'll be borrowing the turf on the pitchforks from the Healy Rays, and they'll be marching on Independent House. The Irish Independent this morning. Connacht boost as Aki edges closer, it says, to New Deal. You can't celebrate a contract until it's signed, though, right? So somebody's playing a bit of brinkmanship here. Cian Tracy has the story, and it's interesting that they're talking about it. You know, I believe that with every day it's getting closer. There's certainly a lot of positivity coming out of Bundy around his energy towards Connacht and our energy towards him. Listen, he's been fantastic in his time here. We continue to see the man growing every day. He's got great energy around the group. He's very passionate towards Connacht and everything we're doing. So, look, I hope it gets done, because it'd be a real shame if it's not. And maybe, look, that's Andy Friend putting a bit of pressure on Bundy to sign. Come on, Bundy, come on, just do it. Like, let's not have this distraction. Rugby's weird in the way these contracts are all sorted out so early, as opposed to in, the summertime.
It'd be an odd story to float now, wouldn't it, if he was actually going to leave? It usually works the other way around, that Bundy Aki is... Obviously, we had that story a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that would allow him to get perhaps a bit more edge. But he would be the first player Connacht have ever had that would be on a centralised contract?
Somebody said that outside, yeah.
That is kind of significant for Connacht, that they have a centralised contracted player, and this idea that they're kind of the fourth rung on the ladder of Irish rugby, that might begin to change if they're starting to get the resources from the top, or at least the RFU are making a commitment to their very best players that we're going to keep them.
Yeah, in a weird way they need it more than a team based in the capital who has the ability to generate its own revenue on match day and all that kind of stuff as well. And there's another story there from Donegal Boyle which is interesting. Roscommon motion leaves fixtures task force facing another hurdle. The work of the Fixtures Review Task Force is set to face another hurdle before it can be enacted after Roscommon County Board passed a motion calling on the GAA's top brass to put its proposals to the clubs of the country. So this motion was brought forward by the Kilmore Club and Club Players Association member Tommy Connolly. So he obviously played a key role in the change to Rule 42, and he says that the CPA's decision, obviously, last week to withdraw from the Fixtures Review Committee because it was a Trojan horse designed to give cover to the GAA, they're going to have to put that to the clubs if this motion is successful. Now, obviously, they'll find a way to... No, we don't need to put that to the clubs. They're going to have to find a way to work that out, but it'll be very interesting to see what the response is when the actual document gets published. I don't remember so much anticipation of a document being published before.
Well, it's certainly one that has a huge ramification on every aspect of GAA, and Connolly is very worried about the impending danger of professionalism in the game. It's something else he talks about, that he fully believes that the GAA are going that way, that part of the Trojan horse argument is that actually what the GAA want to get into eventually is professionalism, which he would say is detrimental to the club game.
I can't see that being... Like, why would the GAA be interested in professionalism?
More money.
But you have to pay people.
But would it not create more revenue streams? You have more control over the inter-county
The minute
game.
you don't have to give anybody any of that revenue stream, are you going to double the revenue stream?
Well, it'd be interesting to see what role the GPA would have in a professional GAA. That quite often people talk about, what is the motive of the GPA? Do they want professionalism for their players? Like, is that actually? Well, I guess all professional sporting bodies do have a players' union. Does their role change? Does their funding change? I wonder. I don't know. Like, it's true, I suppose. Actually, you do have to fork out more money to allow a professional league. I guess you just have more control over the county players. Do they play club at any point? I don't know. It's I don't think we're anywhere close to that, but it's just something that Connolly did say at the end of those quotes. Back page of the London Times this morning is Liverpool waste chance. Holders still not sure of their place in the last 16. Chelsea also have to wait after draw in Spain. And this story here by Martin Ziegler. Amazon Rush to fix picture problem before football debut. So Amazon, they're in talks with Britain's leading internet providers amid concerns that the demand to watch Premier League matches next week will cause streaming problems for viewers. So they're showing all 10 Premier League games on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next weekend, or next midweek, I should say. There is also...
Amazon?
Amazon.
Yeah.
The Times has spoken to some Amazon employees who fear that the platform underestimated the technical and production requirements required and said that there has been feverish last-minute work to rectify the situation.
I'm sure it's going to be fine, right? Yeah, Amazon have plenty of money. The front page of the Irish Independent I should have done really. Garda probe after audit of FAI raises questions. So a triple byline on this one. Philip Ryan, Dan McDonnell and Tom Brady, their security correspondent. Garda are probing the findings of an audit of the FAI's finances, which was ordered by Sport Ireland in the wake of controversy surrounding former CEO John Delaney's management of the organisation. So this is obviously the story that broke yesterday, that Sport Ireland and Minister Shane Ross have referred the COSI audit into the FAI's finances to the Gardaí. So government sources revealed that the Department of Transport, Sport and Tourism officials said a key focus of the report was whether FAI funds were used to pay for expenses which were not relevant to the organisation. Obviously this is something that we can't speculate about until the details emerge, because you don't want to prejudice anything that might be coming down the line. But certainly Fergus O'Dowd was on offtheball.com last night saying that he thought that the FAI were going to find themselves in serious bother. Yeah, so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here. The report also looked at concerns about whether funds were paid to individuals who may not have been entitled to the money. This COSI report is very important in terms of one of the things that needs to happen is a new board needs to be instigated. At the minute, there are still 2 old members of the board who are on. Shane Ross says until those 2 old members who are a hangover from the previous generation, until they're gone, he won't be interested in restoring government funding to the FAI. And the COSI report was going to be published, and then the independent directors were going to get a look at it to see exactly what they're getting involved in. And so we're kind of in this weird impasse now where this has been referred to the Gardaí. That could take ages. That could take
years.
6 months. It could take 12 months. It could take multiple years. So the FAI are in a spot of bother, all right. Noel Mooney's all over the papers today.
Yeah, he's all over the newspapers. The situation with Fergus O'Dowd, like quite often what you have with these situations is a lot of leaks. It seems to be fairly watertight so far. Like obviously there's kind of loose talk about the possible implications of something going towards the guards, which is fairly obvious. You read out O'Dowd's quotes there. But this is watertight. There hasn't been a whole pile of information as to what actually is in this report or how severe this report is actually going to be, and when we're actually going to find out what the hell is in this thing, because as you say, it could take a long time. Like Mooney was in front of the microphones again yesterday. I presume his last media commitment after his secondment from UEFA, and one of those lines is about Stephen Kenny and his potential backroom team as Republic of Ireland senior manager. That is carried on the back of the Irish Daily Mail. Kenny Terrain, successor to McCarthy, will rule long term. Stephen Kenny is set to rule long-term Republic of Ireland manager when he succeeds McCarthy next summer. But there are no guarantees that current Irish assistant coach Robbie Keane, whose FAI contract runs for the duration of the 2022 World Cup, will be part of his backroom staff. So that'll be interesting to see what happens.
That's fair enough. Like Robbie shouldn't be inflicted on him unless he wants him, right? You shouldn't have to take anybody.
Stephen Kenny should have total control over who's in his backroom team.
Yeah.
There should be no wiggle room around that. And he doesn't need to be an asshole about it. He can just say, listen, Robbie, Keith Andrews did a really good job with me. Crawford did a really good job with me over the last couple of months. I get on really well with these guys. There might maybe an avenue in the future. You talk to the FAI, you go get your new role, but I want to keep proceeding with these guys for the foreseeable future.
Are they positioning Robbie then to get the under-21 gig? Is that really what that is?
That's some suggestion about that, yeah.
Is that
that was mentioned in the newspaper, was it yesterday morning or the morning before? That's going to be open, and if Stephen Kenny takes all his management with him, there's going to be a raft of positions open. But you'd suspect that Robbie Keane perhaps wouldn't settle for anything other than the top gig within the under-21s.
Yeah. So there's loads more of the FAI story in the papers today. It's on the front cover of The Sun as well. FAI money report sent straight to fraud cops. Their back page is Tammy Ake lamps sweats on Abraham. So obviously Tammy Abraham taken off last night injured, but they hope that he has escaped serious injury. Klopp's 101. Jurgen Klopp celebrated his 100th European match as a manager with a vital point. They're saying he celebrated a 1-1 draw at home to Napoli, I'm not sure he did. And then out of a jobby is the headline on top of the Robbie Keane piece. And Emery, I feel love. You know Emery, I mean, what are we going to do without him in our lives? This bland, non-existent, almost non-person in our sporting lives.
The Severus Snape in all of our lives, gone to the different shores. The Irish Times this morning, Liverpool's advantage is thwarted as Napoli again caused problems. Got Enrique says he sacked Moreno from Spain post for disloyalty. Incredible stuff from the returning Spain manager, saying he didn't want Moreno as his number 2 again. Opportunity missed for Lampard's Chelsea, says Jacob Steinberg. They're 2-2 draw to Mestalla. And a couple of other things here in the Irish Times. You got Emmett Malone on Noel Mooney's quotes yesterday, predicting stronger FAI despite difficulties. Talks about the fact that he's going back to UEFA for the time being. Imminent appointment of former Athletic CEO John Foley as interim chief executive has been known about for some time. And then it kind of goes through Mooney's quotes on the current situation, and the emphasis really needs to be now on restoring the relationship between the FAI and the government. When you've still got 2 or at least 2 or 3 of the old guard involved with the FAI, how far can that relationship go to being fully mended? That remains to be seen. Like he says, Shane Ross has said that he's not going to be happy unless there is like a full, proper clear out. And then there's like quotes about cash and actually profit here, which is, or not profit, definitely not profit, but he says there's a big difference between profit and cash. And cash, without wanting to sound like somebody from the office or anything, is king. The facts are that we would have known that the FAI is struggling in terms of cash flow for a long time. That was no secret, says Mooney. And then he makes like this valid point, which everybody kind of knows, but it's worth reminding that things would be helped hugely if Ireland's qualified for the Euros next year, because it'll be worth €5 million to the organisation based on the minimum €9.25 million that the association would get from being involved, plus various sponsorship and bonuses, less the cut the players would get and expenses. So no pressure to everybody involved in Nick McCarthy's setup in these back-to-back playoffs, well, hopefully 2 playoffs next summer or next March. But the future of the FAI is resting on your shoulders. You've got to bring in some cash for this kind of paralysed organisation that doesn't have a whole pile of cash flow at the moment. So it's not exactly the most happy reading when you think about the prospects here, especially if we don't qualify for this Euros next year.
OK, we did mention Fergus O'Dowd was talking to us on offtheball.com last night. He was also on Newstalk Breakfast this morning and had this to say when asked whether he thinks the report should be published now.
Yeah, I think this would have never seen the light of day, even though it's quite dark for us now to know what's going on. I think that Mark did a fantastic job, and I do agree if there's any way in which findings or anything can be released that doesn't compromise a Garda investigation, we should do that. And Mark is right too. The money that the FAI have got has been 50 million since 2008. So like there's a lot of money going into that organisation. And if there are questions now, there must be questions, you know, I don't know what the issues are, but they must go back a long time. I spoke to the Minister yesterday and I agreed that obviously clearly natural justice and due process has to happen. But I think if there's conclusions separate that don't infringe or touch on any potential legal or other inquiry, that we should try and do that. And the other thing I feel is that, you know, why should women's soccer suffer? Why should young people's soccer suffer in terms of money being withheld from them? When the money was stopped initially or was held back, we all expected to report it in 2 or 3 months. This could go on for another 6-9 months easily.
Yeah, that's the thing. So there's a row brewing between the various politicians about whether or not funding should be restored in some way, and if somebody's making the point on the day that a report gets referred to the Gardaí, how can you give money to the organisation? But like, there's surely mechanisms you can give the money to Sport Ireland. Sport Ireland can give the money directly to a certain number of projects and clubs who were due to get it. So this is funding directly for specific projects. Sport Ireland must have a record of it somewhere. The FAI must have a record of it somewhere. That can all be administered. We have an apparatus, a state apparatus in Sport Ireland that is capable of doing that. They might need to take on some extra staff in the short term, some contract staff. They could absolutely manage to do that. So that should happen. That would not be giving the FAI the opportunity to wriggle off the hook, because in the meantime, sport and football is suffering because of what happened under the last regime. That makes no sense. That makes absolutely no sense. And like the grandstanding from Shane Ross and all this, like, has been unbelievable, even by his own standards as a champion grandstander. So
He's probably getting a bit of pleasure from this going to the Guards yesterday.
Well, I mean, it's drama, and he's at the centre of more drama again. But like, it's obviously clearly the right thing to do too. Bear in mind though that if that does last 6 or 9 months, the likelihood is that if the UK election goes the way we all think it's going to go at the moment, then there's a strong likelihood there'll be an Irish election in the early part, certainly in the spring next year, by which time it won't be Shane Ross Minister for Sport again. So this is the end of his involvement over the next couple of months. And that whole thing's going to be left in limbo. And the new Minister for Sport who comes in, whoever the hell that is going to have to do a lot of reading to get up to speed very quickly on what's happened. So, I don't know, you would like to think that they can put something in place that will protect and safeguard all of the ground that has been made for women's football and for kids' football, and that doesn't benefit the FAI, and that the FAI are still held to all the rigours analysis that they need to be.
It is mad, isn't it? Because I remember before Theresa May called that idiotic election at that time, we had Damien Collins on the show when he was going through his select committee, digging into what was going on. It was UK cycling, British cycling, I should say, at the time, and he was kind of saying to us around the piece, saying, well, if I lose my seat, this whole investigation is scuppered. Thankfully, he didn't, and he managed to continue his work, but perhaps we don't view Shane Ross with the same esteem that a lot of people in Britain viewed Damien Collins at the time.
No, certainly not. The Racing Post back page is Gunners under fire. They think that Eintracht Frankfurt can pile on some misery for them, and a really interesting piece on the front. Elliot, third national for Tiger is the big dream. So I don't know if you remember, the owner of Tiger Roll is Michael O'Leary, the Ryanair magnate, and he was like, look, you know, chances of him running are slim and none to do like the most historic three-peat of all time. Gordon Ellis, look, I'm training this horse for the Grand National next year. It's obviously his decision. I am training this horse. Can you imagine what it would be like? There's a line here.
What's he going for, the three-peat?
Yeah, exactly. The dream is to get the horse back there. To run would be awesome. If he could head out on the last circuit with a live chance, it'd be some atmosphere. Like one of the greatest racing atmospheres of all time in a sport that's hundreds of years old. And Michael O'Leary's like, nah.
Nobody believed O'Leary when he said that at the time.
Well, he's, you know, I mean, he's that bloody-minded.
Here's this really ambitious project. You've just climbed Everest. Here's an even bigger mountain, and you're an excellent mountaineer. You're not. I'm just not going to climb that mountain. Nah, can't be bothered. Of course he's going to do it. Back page of the Irish Daily Star. We haven't done this already, have we? Deja vu. Maybe that's a headline that's appeared elsewhere because it kind of feels familiar. Napoli. There you go. No, I was kind of thinking, Drew.
Everybody else's head, and Tommy's kind of cringing a little bit in there.
Napoli pushed Reds. It was just organic, really. Napoli pushed Reds to the limit once more as Klopp is left facing nervous finale, and Lampard happy to get the point. And that is Tammy Abraham stretched it off the pitch last night. That is not a good sight for Chelsea fans. And Conway again urged to step down.
Tommy didn't get it. That's why he was cringing. He didn't get it at all. It had to be explained to him 3 times. Right, 5 minutes past 8 this morning. We're talking football next here on OTB AM. Back with Damien Delaney's team of the decade of players that he's played against straight after this.